Japan, 1720. There is no war on, no enemy, no siege, no village burning outside the door, and still, before the first light in a house with paper walls, a samurai is getting dressed more heavily than a soldier. 7 pieces of cloth, 2 swords, 1 seal, and 9 hours of standing. Inside it is freezing. Wind coming through the walls has left a thin damp across the straw mat on the floor. The samurai gets up, washes his face in cold water, picks up the razor and begins shaving the top half of his own forehead. He does this every other day. He will do it for the rest of his life. Then he gathers what is left, binds it tight at the crown with a heavy oil, and ties it off. That knot is not decoration. 200 years earlier, it was an ingenious fix for a specific problem, stopping a man's head from cooking under a helmet. The helmet has been in a chest for 50 years. The knot is still there. This samurai's grandfather never went to war. His father never went. He will not go, and his son will not go. The island has been at peace for over a century, and this peace has another 150 years left to run. Europe fought its way through the same stretch without a break. The 2 swords in his sash weigh less than the laptop bag on your shoulder, but the right to carry both of them belonged to roughly 6% of Japan. And inside that 6%, the samurai who never drew a blade in anger outnumbered the ones who did, many times over. They were maintained anyway, every single day. In damp air, steel rusts overnight. So each evening, the samurai draws the blade, wipes it with a film of oil, dries it with paper, puts it back. The scabbard is a flawless instrument in its own right. It is hollowed, so the blade rides on its blunt spine. The cutting edge never touches wood. A weapon he will not draw in his lifetime, cleaned every day of his lifetime. The walls of the room he woke in were paper. Paper lets light through and keeps sight out, a room that brightens without a window and without letting the cold in. A clever solution. It had a single flaw. It stopped no sound whatsoever. A sentence whispered inside a samurai's house was, technically, outside it. When a samurai stepped out in the morning, he did not have a single decision to make about his own day. Someone told him where to go. Someone told him how many hours to stand. Someone told him how deep to bow and to whom. And if the hilt of his sword swung to the wrong angle, the man coming the other way could take it as an insult. It could get out of hand in a heartbeat. So, what exactly was this man being paid for? Standing outside a gate for 6 hours in winter, his fingers went numb on the grip, and he could not put a hand inside his sleeve. In summer, sweat ran down his back under the thick formal jacket, and he could not take the jacket off. A modern security guard at least leans on a wall. The samurai could not lean because leaning was also reported. It was like spending a 9-hour flight standing in the aisle every day. Same hour, same stone. By every logic, a class like that should have rotted. A soldier who never fights goes soft. Discipline scatters. The system collapses. Europe's knights went exactly that way and never came back. The opposite happened here. After the samurai class put war down, it became far stricter than it had been while fighting. It ran that order flawlessly for 2.5 centuries. Almost everything the world pictures when it hears the word samurai came from this peacetime generation who never landed a single sword blow. In this video, we open that day out hour by hour, from the moment he wakes to the moment he lies down. Stay with it to the end, because the final layer of this man's life never touches a blade. Start with the 7 pieces, because the outfit is doing more work than it looks. On duty days, a samurai wore the kamishimo, kimono, trousers, and over the top a sleeveless jacket with enormous stiffened shoulders. Those shoulders were not vanity. They were a signal. Rank had to be legible across a courtyard in bad light at a glance, like a uniform across a car park today. The shape told you who was walking towards you before his face did. On castle days, the trousers changed, and this is the most elegant engineering in the wardrobe. Formal audience called for nagabakama, trousers cut so long that an arm's length of fabric trailed behind the heels. You do not walk in them so much as push them. Running is not difficult in nagabakama. Running is impossible. You would step on your own hem and go down. The most heavily guarded room in Japan was not secured by guards alone. It was secured by trousers. Every man admitted to the shogun's presence wore a garment that made a sudden rush physically impossible. Everyone in the room knew it. Nobody had to say so. Breakfast was rice, hot soup, and a sour pickle, eaten fast, without conversation. Look closely at the rice, because it is not only his meal, it is his salary. Samurai were not paid in coin, they were paid in koku, and a koku was defined as the amount of rice an adult eats in a year. His income was measured in meals. A man of modest standing might hold 30 koku, fixed, hereditary, and it never moved. Then the walk. In the street he kept to the correct side, scabbard tucked close, angled down and in. This was not fussiness. If 2 scabbards knocked together in passing, the collision itself was an offence, and both men had a problem they did not want before breakfast. So he walked his own city, adjusting a piece of wood on his hip every few steps, all day, for life. The etiquette we remember as grace began as traffic management for armed men in narrow, dusty streets. The duty itself would disappoint anybody expecting drama. He reported to a roster. He stood at a gate, in a corridor, in an ante-room. A fixed block of hours, a marked spot, a fixed posture. Nothing happened. Nothing was supposed to happen. Nobody wanted it to. Attendance was the job. Being present, correct, and visible was the service, and the roster tracked it like a shift rotor tracks a warehouse floor. So would you take that deal? No risk, no decisions, no way out. Paid for life. Tell me underneath, because I think this splits people straight down the middle. And on the days he was not standing, he was writing. Almost nobody pictures this part. By 1720, the overwhelming majority of samurai were administrators. They audited granaries. They logged repairs to riverbanks. Ink was ground fresh every morning on a wet stone. They copied orders, checked the arithmetic on tax returns, and signed off on the cost of roof tiles. The man with 2 swords in his belt spent most of his working life holding a brush. In Europe, the men who did that work carried a pen and nothing else. Here, the civil service kept the swords on while it did the paperwork. If a detail like that is why you are still watching, tap like, because that tap decides whether anyone else sees this. Free afternoons went to training. Wooden swords in a wooden hall that smelled of sweat and old floor oil. The same forms, over and over, against opponents who would never be enemies, for a fight everybody knew was not coming. No war, no enemy, no date on the calendar. It is easy to call that theatre. I would call it something else. 9 generations held a physical standard that precise, with nothing on earth left to enforce it. That is among the most remarkable feats of institutional discipline in history. Most organizations cannot hold a standard for a decade. Evening brought the hot bath, the second meal, whatever family life the house allowed. Then the lamp, the oil, and the paper again for the blade. Then sleep with the short sword close enough to reach without standing up. Nothing was going to come through that paper wall. He kept it within reach anyway. Every habit in the day answered a problem that peace had already solved, and none of them had been switched off. Which brings us to the last layer. It is not made of steel. Our man's salary was fixed in rice. The world around him was not. Over the 17th century, Japan built a fast cash economy. The price of everything he needed, cloth, oil, lamp fuel, school for his sons, was set in coin that moved. His rice did not move. So, what happens to a man whose pay cannot move when every price around him can? When the harvest was good, the price of rice fell, and a good year made him poorer. That is the trap, and it is arithmetic, not misfortune. And so he borrowed. Down at the rice wharves, brokers called fudasashi took a samurai's stipend as collateral. They advanced him money against a harvest that had not happened. That is a payday loan with a sword rack in the hall. Landed gentlemen in London and Paris were sliding into the same hole. By the end of the Genroku years, in the early 1700s, that debt had swallowed much of the class. Nobody had a realistic path to repay it. Now, look at who he owed it to. The official order of society placed the samurai at the top and the merchant at the very bottom. The man at the top owed money he could not repay to the man at the bottom, and he had to bow correctly to him on the street. That is what wore these men out, not battle and not even boredom. It was the daily arithmetic of keeping up a warrior's appearance on a soldier's pay in a country that no longer needed soldiers. The armor in the chest, the shaved head, the 2 swords, the 9 hours of standing. All of it had to be funded, and the funding was running out. So here is my question for you. What are you still doing every single day because of a threat that stopped being real years ago? Because that is what this was. Not a story about swords. A story about a man who was superb at a job that no longer existed. He got up the next morning and did it perfectly anyway. Next time you see a samurai on screen, do not watch the blade. Watch the routine. If you want the next piece of this world, subscribe and I will keep bringing them.